Hello and welcome to the Sidekick podcast with me, Tank. Our podcast enables sport martial artists from all over the world to get to know some of the top athletes in our sport from both the past and the present. We aim to bring their martial arts journey to light and find out what makes them so prominent in our sport, what inspires them, and what training regimes they go through leading up to big tournaments. As always, if you enjoy our podcast, then let us know through one of our social media pages. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you're listening on YouTube, hit the notifications bell and you'll get notified every time we drop a podcast. The guest on this episode is Kenn Forrest. Kenn is a multinational champion. He is a 3-time world champion and is now passing his knowledge on to his students at Reminisce Martial Arts. This is the big man himself, Kenn Forrest. Okay, so Kenn, episode 6 of the Sidekick podcast. Thanks for speaking with us, taking the time out of your day to do this. If we just start, as we always do, with how you got involved in martial arts.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me. It's an absolute honour. I've seen who else has been on and listened to snippets of it, and it's proper high-end guys in there, isn't it? So it is a creep. Yeah. So like when you asked me, and I was chuffed. So thank you very much. Over the moon. How did I get started? I didn't really start with kickboxing. Kickboxing or a kicking sport wasn't around in my little village when I was young. So I started off when I was 3, and the only thing available when I was 3 was judo in an old sort of community hall. In judo I enjoyed because it was a physical aspect, but I was just 3, and I sort of remember it a little bit. I probably stuck with judo for maybe about 18 months, I would think. And I just wasn't getting anywhere because when I was 3, I know I'm quite a big fella now, but then I was actually tiny. I was skinny. I was thin. I didn't have anything about me. And then there was a boxing club opened up. There wasn't any, like I say, any martial arty kicky stuff. And it was in the YM, and I enjoyed the boxing a little bit more than the judo. Purely because I was striking people. I think that sort of kept the fire in me, that actually hitting, and it seemed a little bit more competitive because it was like you hit them, they hit you, and it sort of stung a little bit when you got hit. And I really enjoyed the boxing. So that was probably how I got started, between 3 and 5-year-old doing that. I wasn't until I was maybe 7 or 8, because it's quite a small little village where I'm in. It's a town now, but at the time it was a little village, and kickboxing or martial arts or anything didn't really come into it until I was like, I would say it was maybe 83, 84 before anything like that came in.
And was it kickboxing you went to?
No, Shotokan.
Yeah.
Shotokan, that was the first sort of kicking sort of sport. And the fella who ran it, he actually lives not far from me now. At the time I didn't know him, I was just a kid. And it was, he kept it steeped in history. He was very old school, like in Shotokan. Everybody was in their lines. Everybody's suits had to be starched. He was meticulous with stuff like that.
Was it in Japanese?
He did some in Japanese, from what I remember. Yeah. Like the Mawashigeris and all the sort of the terminology they would use. I can't remember it now. Like I say, it was 30 odd year ago. Funny story back to the fella, without diversifying too much. The fella who taught me Shotokan, and I was there maybe about did a couple of grades, learned a couple of forms. He brought his grandson back to my club to train because he packed in teaching. And he came in and he asked, he says, "Can I bring my grandson to train with you?" So he obviously followed me, and I seen him now and again, and that. And I thought that was a bit of an honour for a martial arts instructor to bring his grandson to another martial arts instructor. He could have went anyone, and I was over the moon with that. Actually, one of my first martial arts instructors brought the grandson to me. I enjoyed it.
Must have been good. Yeah, it's nice. So after Shotokan, what was then?
So Shotokan, that sort of, I kept that running alongside the boxing. So I did the boxing. In Shotokan and boxing, they don't really go hand in hand, to be fair. They were 2 different things. So the Shotokan maybe tailed off, I was saying, after about 18 months. And then there was a freestyle karate. came into town, which was back then. It's not kickboxing, and people categorize things now as kickboxing or karate or we compete
karate
as
and
yeah, we compete as kickboxers, as sport karate, whatever it is. But back in the day, it was just freestyle karate, and it was watered down Taekwondo. That's really what it was. This fella was a Taekwondo practitioner and a Taekwondo student from like the centre of Newcastle, where it had been around and about. And then he came and he opened up a few classes in the area, and that was really good. It was a style. It was called Jintiando, which meant the way of today, I think it meant. And he had a really modern take on martial arts for back then. Back in early 80s, he was training the music. He had he used to bring dance instructors in to do flexibility with you and stuff. He had a really modern take. Considering it was the 80s, he had a really modern take. I know there's a lot of people do that now, but back in the early 80s, you went to a martial arts school and you did martial arts. You learn how to kick, you learn how to punch or whatever. And he was always bringing different people in, which that grabbed me, that kept me actually, because I knew he seemed genuine. He wanted to develop you, you know, and you would go, and it was like-minded people. And I pretty much stuck with that. That's the basis of my martial arts now, was what I learned there.
You've gone to your freestyle karate, watered down Taekwondo, as you called it. Were you then competing in local competitions?
Yeah. So from the offset, this club used to compete, and because of his background, the fella who taught me was a fella called Master Ray Bilcliffe, which if you've watched any of the Clash events from Bob Sykes, he was actually every other year he used to take a demonstration team there. So if you want to do a bit of research on him, that was there. So he used to compete. And we used to compete mainly in Taekwondo tournaments, with a big kick shield on that you wear and all that, which is hard work. Have you ever fought in one of them? Have you? Kick shield.
Yeah. There was a club in Liverpool that we used to go to, so they come to us now and again, and we go to them now and again. And I could never work out why I wasn't allowed to use my hands. Obviously, I was only a kid really, and you'd come in doing all these round kicks, and I'd be thinking, well, the most direct route is a reverse punch. So I'd throw reverse punch and they'd be like, whoa, no, we're just kicking to death.
We just kick, and when we kick, please don't block it. You know. So I did a few national Taekwondo championships. Again, that might have been about 85 to 87-ish. And that was the mainstay of his tournaments. But we used to travel. He would organise bus trips, and the bus trips would be up and down the country to these different tournaments, like Sheffield, Coventry. That's mainly where they were at. So I competed from a very early age. From that, as with most martial arts schools, there's splits, and this guy stopped teaching. He moved to Florida. So then I moved to another freestyle martial art, which was called Northern Freestyle, and I trained with them for a while, but they weren't competitors. They didn't do competitions. They do have a competition team now. That club still goes, but then we didn't. So I had a break for a good while, maybe 7 years or something. So I went from a style that used to compete quite regular, and you organise bus trips, and then he stopped, and there was a split, and my instructors from Northern Freestyle started to teach, but they didn't do any. So 7-year layoff as a teenager, really, where I didn't compete, and I missed the competing. I missed that. And then it was left up to our own devices, really, to find competitions, because they didn't compete and didn't have a squad. They didn't have any squad training, where competitive people would meet and train. And that's pretty much where Andy and Ross. That's pretty much where we all got together. So the three of us, and we wanted to compete. So we found the tournaments, and that's that's where you met us, wasn't it?
Yeah. Can you remember the first one you went to? The first sort of big tournament?
The first tournament that I went to, before Ross and Andy, it was the MAI Open.
Okay, yeah.
Can you remember the MEI Open?
I do, yeah.
So it was a series. And it was in the Martial Arts Illustrated magazine, and then there would be 3 or 4 tournaments up and down the country.
Yeah.
And then you would fight, and then you would get so many points for a win, and so many points.
And then you get the Grand Champion trophy at the end, wouldn't you? With
yeah, that's right.
Usually at Samurai, wasn't it?
Yeah, and Brendan Mitty. That was my first encounter with Brendan. Brendan was fighting for Alfie at the time.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was young, and I was explaining about the judo. I was lean, so I was quite quick because of it. And I used to rock up to quite a few tournaments and win just because I was tall and quick. Yeah. And then when I fought Brendan was just a different level at that time, to be fair, come to what I was at that time. Yeah. He had Alfie in his corner. And he tore me apart for a little while, actually. You know, he was exactly what you're saying about the reverse punch. He was just direct. Me coming from a loosely based Taekwondo background, and I was all around the corner with these roundhouses and the turning kicks that was coming in the spins. He was down the line, you know, just banging the points in.
Right down the throat,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So he ended up came in first. He came in first on it, and I was second at the MEI league. So that'll have been 85-ish, 86, 85, if my memory serves us right. But they were great. They were great tournaments. Back in the day, everywhere was busy, you know, and there was like 9s, 10s, 15 people in every category. You know, it was great.
Yeah. I was only speaking with someone last week, and we were talking about the old FSKs where you had all the cages on the edge of the areas. You had stands on every side of the arena, and when was the FSKs? Did the FSKs, were they late 80s, were they? Late 80s, early 90s. I think my first one was probably 91.
Right. I seem to remember late 80s hitting the one, very early 90s possibly. And I remember there was sometimes you would fight and you were just on the hardening mats, and then the complete flip the other side, there was some mats out, but they were like a crash mat. They were like 6 inches thick. Yeah. And I remember competing on them. As soon as you stood on them, your legs just seemed to drain instantly.
You used to roll them out.
Yeah, that's right.
Roll them out, and they'd have a Velcro strip to Velcro them together.
Yeah, that's the ones. Big blue. They seemed about like a foot thick, but they weren't. They were 2 or 3 inches, you know. But I remember that. And I remember the queues. The queues was
out into the car park and round the building.
Along the corridors and right out into the car park. The car park was full. You couldn't get part of the car park. You were like, and that's always a bit of a travel for us. It's like just about 3 hours living up here where we live. That's probably the closest mainstream tournament we had was the FSKs.
Well, when we used to go, obviously I was probably 6 when I done my first tournament there, and all the adults get all the kids together and you give them the money and say, right, you wait in the queue and then pay for your category when you're at the front. So all the kids would pay for the category, and they remember they used to stamp your hand.
Yeah, they did.
They'd stamp your hand, but you were never allowed to go straight in. You had to come right back out, and your parents would get your hand and they'd lick it and then transfer the stamp onto their hand, and then they'd all go in.
Before you said that, right? But that's exactly what we used to do. Yeah. Before that came out of your mouth, I was just about to say it. We used to lick the back of the hand, and we used to just roll it on the back and transfer it in. That's exactly what we did. Yeah. Eight things you do to save £3 to get into a tournament.
I know, mate. So at that time, you will have been doing points then, Ken, won't you?
No, continuous only. Yeah, I was the Northern Freestyle team that I had, not team, but the club that I was in, they didn't compete, but they had a section, and so did the Jintiana beforehand, that just focused on full contact. Okay. So before I had done any mat events other than the Taekwondo, I was fighting in rings at full contact. So I was predominantly a continuous full contact fighter. Yeah. That's how I started off. Other than I started off in the Taekwondo. Yeah. So that's points from there. But then the complete flip side, once I had my break as a teenager, like 14, 15, and then I went straight into full contact. So I was fighting full contact in the rings and in the clubs and stuff. Yeah. Where you just get one fight, and I used to enjoy that because it was one fight and it was like you could showcase your talent and people would look forward to seeing you. But on the other side of it, the amount of dropouts. So I'm one of these people that if I'm going to the tournament, I train hard. I treat it like I'm an athlete. I don't just rock up and just have a turn. I don't think that's right. I think the sport deserves a little bit more respect than that. Yeah. So even if I would go to the World Championships now and I was only one person going, I would still do me 10 weeks training. I would put everything into me training as if I was going to fight Mike Tyson or however it would be, you know, like. So I would do that for these full contact events. I would run. I would be training every day. I'd put everything. I'd eat right, and then the guy would drop out the week beforehand with a poorly hand or a pulled hamstring, or you know. And it just so somebody convinced me to start off going to like more mat events, like the WACO and WKA. I did because trying to jump from full contact in the rings to doing WKA continuous was quite an easy step. Because WKA promote a lot of that sort of stuff. Yeah. So it was quite an easy step. So that's where I started off my mat event. Really was WKA, and again they held one in Manchester. The WKAs, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, it was in the George Carnell Sports Centre, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
Peter Lewis used to run it, didn't he?
That's right.
Yeah.
So that was from where I live. It's like 40, 50 miles from Scotland.
Yeah.
There was a lot of WKA events in Scotland. WKA is still quite big in Scotland. Yeah. And then the Manchester. So I was sitting in the middle of the 2 or 3 hours either side. And for the first 3 or 4 years of competing in mats, I only ever did continuous. I never did points at all.
Now, I didn't even know that continuous was going back then, Ken.
Did you not?
No, I honestly thought it come in about 94, 95.
Oh, no. Funnily enough, even as a child, when I was with the first freestyle club, we did continuous, but we did it without equipment on. I know this sounds horrendous now, but we did continuous sparring without equipment. So you're allowed to strike to the body, but there was no contact to the head. But without any equipment on. And then it got moved. We had bumper mitts. They were called bumper mitts.
I remember bumper mitts. We used to, we had the shinning and step, and they were like gloves where your 2 fingers went through it.
Yeah,
like, sort of.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. So they were like your fingers. They went into them as your foot would go into the tabai boot. You know, it split.
Kind of like a UFC glove.
Yeah,
but without the pattern.
So we did that for a long time. Yeah. And whether my instructor, again, because I was a child, whether my instructor just found those tournaments and only took one of them, I don't know. And maybe that was my bubble, so I didn't see or do anything else. Yeah. That's entirely possible. But yeah, so I was continuous all the way. Probably until I had danced with points in local tournaments. Yeah. In local, when there was an event on. The local clubs had put on that was within my driving distance, and I used to do continuous and points, and then just for extra mat time. But every time I went to the WK British, we'll say, from maybe 2000, I only did continuous. Only. Yeah.
So when you're going to these tournaments, then are you watching, Ken? Are you staying and watching like any adults?
Yeah, from Kung Fu sort of style. That was like I can actually remember Alfie competing, so I would watch Alfie. Yeah,
I remember the tail end of Alfie. Well, the tail end of Alfie before he retired. I know he had a bit of a comeback later on.
Yeah. So about the same time as me then. Yeah. So I remember Alfie. Kevin Bruton, because Kevin Bruton's from up my area. Yeah. And I know Kevin quite well. Yeah. So because he was a bit of a superstar from our area and I was just a kid, I would watch Kevin Bruton. And I'm struggling with his surname, but I used to nickname him, he was like the human fly. It's Chris
Williams.
Yeah, Chris Williams. Yeah. He was quality, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was, yeah. There was loads of them, I think, about that area. You know, I think I liked Chris Bowie as well. And
Chris Bowie.
Yeah. Wayne Turner, Wayne Homeboy Turner. There was
I remember
there
we
was Pele
it's when you
Reid.
mention the names that they come back.
Yeah.
You know, it's like when you're asked, you think, you know. But yeah, that was some great adults then. You know, like, you know, as to sit and watch Matt Side as a child. You know, it was good.
So at what point did you think, you know, I've got something here and I can go somewhere with this?
Oh, do you know what? It was probably Andy Gray's fault. Because Andy Gray, I used to spar with Andy a lot. And Andy, him and I and Ross, close, same little club, same little place.
Yeah.
Andy won a Wackler British.
Yeah.
Years ago. He won a Wackler British. And he got selected to go to Italy to fight. I think it was, might be mistaken, but I think it was the Europeans he fought. I don't think it was World Wackler,
No, it was Europeans. It was, yeah.
Yeah, it was Europeans, yeah. And we sort of did some sponsorships and we saved some money up to get Andy there, you know, because everything costs. And I remember sparring with Andy and I'm thinking, I could be doing this too, you know. I could be at the world level or international level or whatever it would be. And then it seemed unachievable, to be fair, beforehand, before somebody I knew who did it. You know, because Andy had broke that mold and he had done it. Yeah. And then I thought, right, I'm going to take this seriously, you know, and do it. Yeah. And I think Andy went and he did quite well at his first Europeans. I think he came third, I think it was. And I think Richard Phillips took him underneath his wing because can you remember Richard Phillips?
Yeah, I remember Richard, yeah.
Yeah, he took him underneath his wing. So when Andy came back, we sort of had a bit of a chit chat, and I says, right, that's it. We're gonna hit Waco and we're gonna hit the WKA in continuous, see how we get, you know. And we ended up qualifying. And the first year we qualified was for Killarney, 2002.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
In Ireland.
In Ireland, yeah. So
yeah.
We got the coach there, so it was like a day and a half coach trip. Where we are, as they always were.
Good old WKAs, yeah.
Yeah. Traveling in your full suit, your tie on, and you know, like all that. Yeah, traveling for a day and a half. And then I remember getting there, and there was an airport about 10 minutes drive from the hotel I was staying in.
Well, I spoke about this on the podcast with Bev, and we went to Dublin one year. I can't remember if it was I think it was a WKC. Maybe it might have been the first WKC. Liverpool's only 25 minutes on a plane to Dublin.
Yeah.
We had to get a coach to wherever it was.
Yeah.
And then the ferry across, and the ferry was cancelled, and because of bad weather, and took us about.
That's right. I was there.
Hours to get there. Do you remember?
Yeah, I do, because the ferry was cancelled, high winds, and then we found a little small cinema house in the little.
Remember, because I was with you.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And we were sat in the picture house and we watched, I forget what was on the picture house.
It's just come to me then, yeah.
But it was horrendous weather.
Do you remember it took us hours to get there? And then you had Austria in 2001 where it took us about 36 hours.
Yeah.
The bus got lost in Luxembourg and it was it. Yeah. That's how it was back in them days, though, wasn't it?
It is. And most of my early memories of travelling to the world is on a coach in a full suit with a tie.
Well, I remember that in 2001, and I was sitting next to Paul McBride. I didn't really know many people then, and I was going on my own. I was only 15 or something. My dad was flying over another day, and I was sitting next to Paul McBride, and Paul McBride was very regimented. Everything. He ate right. He trained everything. So Paul had like a stack of food in his bag. So every couple of hours, he was pulling like tuna out and eating the tuna. And then he'd just be sitting there in his berth and you'd be like, oh my God, it's all right. We'll be there soon. And then we went. So that was a bit of an experience. But what was that first World Championships you went to in Killarney? What was that like?
It was huge and it was a massive eye-opener, actually. Yeah. I knew it was a World Championships. And I sort of hadn't sunk in that it was like a world championships, you know, it was like massive, everybody there. So because it was my first one, I was excited. I had trained really hard, but with a good mix of nerves in. And the nerves makes you train hard. Yeah. Anybody who says they don't get nerves, I don't quite believe them, to be honest. I think nerves is a good thing as long as
I think you've got to get nervous, yeah.
Yeah, you have to. Otherwise, why would you get up and train? And why, you know, like it's them nerves and the fear of getting beat or showing up or whatever it is. So when we got there, the hotel was nice and the hotel was joined on the venue. and everything just seemed so official that I was there. You got a stamp on your passport, and you got weighed off, and it was, in my eyes, and it was, whether it was just because it was my first time, it was a big event. And if I remember correct, I think Sky or something, or somebody was there filming it to put on Sky TV. I think it was Sky, and it was, I think there was probably 15 or 20 people in my section. Yeah, it was there were big sections back in the day, and then that stressed me a little bit again. And then watching people fight who I had never seen before, and you sort of, I teach the kids now, say, future events appear real. So you watch them on the mat, and you see the guy hitting you with a sidekick, or you see the guy hitting you, and you believe that that's what's going to happen. You've really got to break that chain of thought before you get on the mat. So the atmosphere got to me a little bit initially, and I settled in, and I worked my way at the final. It's a funny tale, actually. Were you there at the 2002? I
wasn't, no.
Right. So there's a fella, Ben Showtime Stewart. You know Ben?
Yeah.
Canadian?
No, I know Ben. I've fought Ben before, actually,
Yeah, I fought him a good few times. Yeah. And he was there, and do you know what? I'm not gonna. He's good. Ben is good, right? Yeah. But he's like, he's a show off. He's flamboyant, isn't he?
Absolutely, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? He's look at me, I'm Mr. Big sort of style, you know.
Yep.
And I was watching him on the mat, and he was like, for me, he was a world level competitor, and I had just stayed in the UK, and you could see the jump, you could see it was different. Yeah. And him and I were supposed to fight in the final. And the finals at that time, they were at the end of the week, as they normally are, but they were on stage. So the stage was lifted above. I was in like an auditorium where people would sit up and around, and I was thousands of people here, because there was 300 on the England team alone, and then the spectators. It was a big event. Yeah. And the camera crews was there. There was a camera in each corner, because again, I think it was by Sky, and we were supposed to fight at something like 8:30 and 9 o'clock. And typical with every tournament, it runs on and runs on. Yeah. And so the nerves was building up, because I had watched him, and he hadn't really watched me much. You know, he was in his own little world doing what he was doing. Yeah. And I had built it up in my head how good he was, which is a mistake. And I learned that now. I was young, and it was my first time, you know. So I thought, I'm going to go across and speak to him. So, and he's standing, and he's warming up, and he's lifting his leg up, and he's just boom, boom, boom with this leg, and saying, look at me, you know. And I walked across, and I remember thinking, he was shorter than me. As soon as I got across to him, he was shorter and littler. So the first thing that came to my head was, he's not as big as me. So then I shook his hand, and I goes, hiya, pleased to meet you. I says, I'm Ken. I says, but you're not as big as what I remember. And I said that to him. And he looked at us, and then I just walked away. So psychologically, I hadn't really thought about it as a psychological game. It was just it was just what I was thinking. That's what blurted out my mouth. You're not as big as what I remember, you know. And then 3 hours later, we ended up on the mat. Yeah. And we were fighting. And it lasted 1 minute and 32. I hit him he hit me some good few shots as well, mate. But when I hit him, it ended up cutting his nose and breaking his nose. So then I got disqualified. Yeah. Well, actually, Robbie Hughes Senior, he fought in the corner, and Ben ended up medically unfit to continue, sort of style. Yeah. So I still got my silver medal. And I still think on that day he probably would have beat me, just from his experience. Yeah. And it was just a shot that happened. So yeah, that's how I came home, over the moon really, to get a medal. Yeah. But slightly disappointed that, you know, it ended that way. But having said that, a lot of people remembered me because of that final. If I had just won it, it would have been forgetting about 30 seconds later. But it was because I fought Ben. Yeah. And there was a bit of controversy about, should I get my medal, shouldn't I get my medal? But look what happened, broke his nose, that sort of stuff. It's that's Kenn who fought Ben, and you know.
I know this story because I've been told it a few times actually. But Ben did actually fight after that, didn't he, on the same night?
Well, yeah. Well, he was supposed to fight again, right? So yeah, I did. I hit his nose, broke his nose. Doctor said he's medically unfit, and he lay on the floor. And afterwards, So a lot of people thought he had done that because he didn't want the fight to continue either, because he realised I was a bit more of a harder hitter than the rest of the people he could show off with, and he couldn't really get his pizzazz on. So he took that as a great opportunity to end the fight and win.
Yeah.
Because he didn't get back up. And Donna was there, Donna Lewis, and Robbie. So they said, yeah, that's it. But he was, they were breaking the fight. So you did a continuous fight, and then there was the weight below above continuous, and then they did your weight points, like after it, so you had a fight gap. And then he came back on with one of these full face shields, you know, with like an ice hockey player would have, with the full-on mask, and, you know, and he was proper taped up. And he was like, yeah, I'm going to fight your points. And then Donna, bless her, she says, nah, he can't fight his points. He's not fighting, you know, like. And then Robbie Hughes says, no, he's not fighting his points. If he's not medically unfit to fight now, he's medically unfit to fight then. And then there was a kick up for half an hour, and he was, it was all political, and, you know, which didn't bother me because I wasn't fighting points anyway then. You know, I was just continuous. My night was done, you know. But yeah, that's what happened there. That's what happened there.
Okay, so you move on from 2002. I presume you went back 2003.
Yeah, where was 2003? Can you remember?
Italy.
Italy, yeah. No, I missed Italy. I couldn't get to Italy. And then the year after that, was it Switzerland?
It was, yeah, Switzerland, yeah.
Switzerland was my next one. I missed Italy. And again, Switzerland was like a day and a half trek on a bus. And when we got to Switzerland, we couldn't stay in Switzerland. So
we had to stay in Germany.
Stay in Germany, that's right. Yeah. And then we'd commute into the stadium every day for the thing. And I remember this little German town that we stayed in. I couldn't speak any English, and I couldn't speak any German. Well, like, I had to live off salad and garlic bread or something for about a week just for order and stuff. It was just one of them things. I enjoyed Switzerland. It seemed it was a big event because it had full contact on. It had
K1.
It had the K1. Yeah. It was a big event. And it was run professional. The early ones what I went to seemed to. I know there's been tales of past in Italy where people's had bad times and stuff, but the first 2 or 3 that I went to were run from the outside because I didn't know anybody on the inside back then. Yeah. Seemed to have been run like professionally. It was a big event, and we fought in the boxing ring then, which I was at home in the boxing ring. There's a lot of people who had just done mat sports, just were used to fighting on a mat, and then when we got to Switzerland and some of the continuous was done in the boxing ring. But because I had been in the boxing ring that often back at home in the clubs and stuff, then it was normal. I quite liked that. It was good, but you got a lot of the full contact fighters who had been fighting the full contact jumped across to do continuous. Yeah. Just while they were there. I presume it's exactly the same as me doing continuous and jumping the points and having a good point. Yeah, they were doing it. And that changed the game a little bit, having some full contact fighters within your continuous. Whether they looked down on you a little bit and thought you did less of a contact but they came in hard and to hit hard again, which I was all right with. But it stopped a lot of fights early, the full contact in there. Yeah,
that was my first Wales with yourself actually. 2004. Was it? It was, yeah. I remember it because of the ring. I remember you fighting in the ring. Yeah, and I remember watching yourself in the ring as well. If I remember correctly, the night show they had the K1 main fight on the night show, and they actually had Chloe Bruce doing.
She did a demo on the stage that come out, didn't it? That's right.
Yeah, they come out because they all come out on like a ramp, didn't they? Like an entrance ramp,
like a walkway thing in it. That's right.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, it was really good. That was my first time of seeing. You watch a lot of fighting on TV and stuff like that, like the K1 or whatever. But that was my first time of actually being somewhere live or like a TV show. Yeah. And I remember seeing some of the shots or hearing them because I was quite close to the front and you were watching the fights and you're thinking, yeah, that's good. And then they showed you replay on a big screen. Can you remember the screens? Those screens? Yeah. And it looked nothing like what it looked like three rows of forehand in the ring. Yeah. You know, and that got me thinking, well, you know, is that this sort of not shocked me, but opened my eyes a little bit where if you're watching boxing on the TV and you think you put them at a different level and stuff, but by the time this thing's edited and it's on TV and you watch the fight, it's a complete different fight.
Yeah.
Like on big screen to what it is in the ring. And then if you can reverse it the other way, I've fought or I've watched people fight and you think that was a great fight. And then you come home and you watch it on your phone or your TV and it just loses its atmosphere. It seems to work the other way, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It never really gets, I don't think you really get a true sort of true view of what actually is happening unless you're ringside. Yeah.
So did you win 2004?
Nah. I got beat by an Austrian. So I fought this Austrian and he was the biggest guy I've ever fought. I don't know if you remember or not. He was 6'8" and he was 22 stone and he had a big red Mohican. Does that ring a bell?
Yes, I fought him in the points.
Did you?
I did, yeah.
Did you beat him?
I did, but there's a bit of a story behind that as well. So when it comes to it, it finished the fight and I was 1-up and this Austrian guy was kicking off. And I thought, I didn't know what he was kicking off. He was shouting in Austrian. I didn't know. Yeah. So Fritz, he was the chief referee at the time.
Yeah.
He come over and my dad was there. And obviously my dad was a world referee, still is, world referee at the time. And he said to me, Dad, this is what the situation is. They say he should have had a point. He hasn't got it, and the referees don't know. So he said to me, Dad, what's your take on it? My dad said, are you asking me as a referee or as his parent? So Fritz says, well, I'm asking you as a referee. He says, well, I think you're right. He should have had a point. Right? But in the meantime, this crazy Austrian guy had gone to the stand. He was on the front row of the stand and he was getting changed and he was still shouting. And I don't know whether he was just in the zone or he didn't care, but he'd stripped off completely naked and was shouting and people were trying to cover him up. And then Fritz had gone up and said, no. So what they ended up doing is they ended up bringing us back on and we had to fight, I don't know, 10 or 15 seconds extra. And then obviously I beat him in that 10 or 15 seconds. But this was like, I'd only been in 2001 and this was my second experience at World Championships. And I'm thinking, what the hell is going on here? It was my first, I was what, 17 or something. It was my first experience of the adults.
Yeah.
Or 18 or something it was. And I was just thinking, this is insane. Is this what happened? And it was a quarter final and I beat him in the quarter final, went through to the semi final. I got beat by a German guy in the semis who won it. It was, again, he was ginormous. He just,
big.
I think personally, I'd got through to the semis and thought, wow, I'm in the semi finals. This is a bit of me here. Yeah. And I just sort of settled for it.
Yeah. That happens a lot. You see that does happen.
Yeah, I do remember the Austrian, he was nutter.
So first round, so Joe Tierney, he was my corner man at the time. I'd travelled there like pretty much myself, and Joe says, I'll be in your corner. And we'd fought all the way through, possibly 4 fights or something to get to the final. Yeah. And then he axe kicked me. He dropped an axe kick on the top of my head. Now I'm 6'4".
Yeah.
And he hit me on top of the head with an axe kick, and it was like getting hit by like a pile driver. It just like went boom, boom, and it knocked me in the canvas. And I shook my head when I was on the bottom, and I looked at Joe in the corner, and Joe just like, well, just get back up. So blasé, but just get back up. So all right, so I shakes myself down, gets me back up, and I thought, well, I'm just going to have to take it of him. And I remember just like, I used a lot more hands than I would normally, just to close the gap. And I stuck at him. Joe thinks I won. I think I won. But you know how things go. I never used to make a scene of it afterwards. If they didn't put my hand up, they didn't put my hand up. If they did, they did. Yeah. But I found out later on, he was Austrian. There was 2 German judges and a Swiss judge. And I'm an English fella. Yeah. And you know how it is.
And like the English.
Yeah. And I knocked him down about 5 times within the next 2 rounds. Not that it's full contact, and I know I was talking about the full contact fighters coming in. But it just tries to show, I'm trying to sort of explain his demeanour in the fight. He after that initial strike on me, I was just on him.
Yeah.
But yeah, they still give it a, I'm forgetting the fella's name, but they still give it to him. But again, I came home happy. Exactly, it was my second World Championships, and I I'd won a silver in the first one and then a silver in my second one.
Yeah.
You know.
Did you ever think it wasn't going to happen?
Yeah, I did think I could win world titles. I did.
And how long did it take you then before you actually won that world title?
My next tournament.
Yeah.
The next Worlds.
Canada, 2005.
Oh, no, sorry, it wasn't. I was in Canada 2005, and that was the worst I have ever been.
That's what, do you know what? That's what Bev Stazaka said. She said that's the worst she's competed as well, Canada.
Yeah, it was with me. I know people just like to get on and talk about how good they are now and again, but no, I was terrible. You know, like, I got on the mat, and I only managed, I won my first round, and then I won my second round against a Canadian, and knocked him out with a kick to the face, and he did another bend where he just lay on the mat, you know, like, and he didn't get up, and I did go through the next round, but at that World Championships, I remember I used to put headphones in, and I'd walk around, and I would just listen to people, and I wasn't playing any music.
Yeah,
I was just listening to their conversation, and they thought that I was playing music. And back in the day, it was you get like a shuffle, like an iPod thing.
iPod shuffle, yeah.
So I used to play it on that, but I wasn't playing. And I was standing and I was listening to Ben. And before I fought the other Canadian who I was supposed to fight, so Ben Stewart was telling me I'm Canadian, and Ben had said to the fella, he says, "Oh, you're fighting him next," and I fought him. And so the Canadian said to Ben, he says, "So what's he like then?" He says, "Oh, he's really awkward and he hits hard." And that was what he had told the Canadian. So I thought, oh well, I'll play on that a little bit. If that's the idea he's put into that Canadian's head, then I might as well capitalise. So I hit him quite hard, and I think it was the first round, you know, and it stopped.
Yeah.
And then the next round, the third one, which was the one, so it'd been the semis, I just couldn't get going. You know, like I was just, you know, you have one of those days where you just feel like you can't lift your leg off the mat, or you just can't move. And that's exactly what happened. I got beat by a guy who ordinarily I wouldn't have gotten out of second gear.
Yeah.
And he just outworked me. He just stood on the mat and he never gave. He just worked and worked and worked. Like, probably he must have just thought, I'm just going to have to work hard with him and see how I get. Yeah. And I had got on the mat thinking, I'm just going to dance around and move and do all this sort of stuff. And he got on the mat thinking, if I just work, I'm going to beat him. And that's exactly what happened. He just worked and he beat me. And that was a real shake up in my head. Actually, that was a proper shake up. Yeah. Because I had gone there a little bit lazy, a little bit hadn't done my prep beforehand, and that was the turning point where I thought, right, now's the time where I've got to take this serious. If I'm going to win, I'm going to have to be mega serious, and I'm going to have to work hard. And I came home with a bronze, I think, from there.
Yeah.
But that was another big event, you know, like in 2005.
Wasn't it? In the casino, it was massive. Yeah, that's when I fought Ben Stewart.
Was it? Yeah, I could see points and continuous there.
Yeah. It might have been the quarter-final. No, It was the one before. It was the quarter-final, it was. Yeah. It was the quarter-final, and I beat him, and I went through and fought the German who'd fought me the year before, and I beat him.
Yeah.
I fought another Canadian in the final, Emmanuel St. Louis, his name was, and he beat me in the final. But that was my world, that I was you're going to win, you know what I mean? It was probably the best I've fought, to be fair.
Yeah.
2005. Yeah.
Well, from leading on from that 2005, and I had said, right, this is my year from now on. I realised I ended up doing some damage to my left knee in 2006. It was still WKA then. It was a WKA British, and I was being silly on the mat doing some fancy jumping kicks or whatever it is, you know, like, because I had one, and it was continuous, and I dislocated my knee. In the fight, and my left knee dislocated, and at the time I didn't know this, but I snapped my cruciate.
Jesus.
I snapped my cruciate, done a little bit damage to me cartilage, and tore my medial ligament. And I had 30 seconds left to fight, and the medic come across and will put my knee back in, and I finished the fight. I had 30 seconds left to fight, and I was like hobbling around. if I was to go back and tell myself that now, I'm always a fool for doing that, because you just create more damage, but back, when the adrenaline's going and you're trying to be the fella, and so that did that, and I couldn't fight for a good year or something afterwards. I had to get it repaired twice.
Yeah.
So that's why my next tournament from 2006, was Florida, which was 2008.
Okay.
Would that be right, to Florida?
I don't know. They all mix into one now.
They do.
Yeah.
But my next one was Florida, so I'm guessing it was either 2007 or 2008.
Yeah.
In there. And
still WKA.
It was still WKA, yeah. And
well, if it was still WKA, it probably
was the last WKA.
That will have been 2008 then, yeah.
Yeah, it was the last WKA.
Yeah.
So I had, because I was coming back from an injury, I spent extra time training, and because of what had happened in Canada, and I attacked Florida actually quite hard. I was pleased to get back out of it, and I thought now was my time. And we were checking into the hotel, and as we were checking in, the first person that walks past me as I'm checking in, Ben Stewart, and I thought, he's just everywhere, isn't he? He had won something like 10 wacko titles or something.
He's actually still fighting.
Yeah, I know. He's had a hip resurfaced
right
before WKU.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. Now I seen something on Facebook a few weeks ago, and I heard he was fighting. Have you seen the virtual fight tour in America?
Yes. I'm
sure he was fighting on that against Anthony Merricks.
Was he?
Yeah.
I'm going to have a look into that, because he's been on holiday for the last 3 months or something like that.
Yeah.
And he fought WKU last year and won the Worlds. Because I was about, he had his hip resurfaced a few years ago, and I was sort of following and watching him because I was due my hip replacement.
Yeah.
And I was seeing how he fought after a hip replacement, and he didn't throw any kicks in the final. He was just blitzed it. He won on blitz. He still won. He used his head. So that's backtracking a little bit. But so I pumped into him in Florida, and him and I, we had a good tear up in Florida. It was really good. They sort of stopped 3 or 4 of the mats around, and Alfie pulled his seat up to shout at me, and we're on the mats, and I beat him before the medal position, so we ended up drawing each other before either of us would get a medal, and I ended up beating him. And I remember he spat his dummy a little bit and wouldn't come and do anything,
Yeah.
That was Florida. Florida was it the sports resort in Florida, wasn't it? And then again, 10 or 15 mats running, loads of people in, and that was the first time in Florida that was I remember being a continuous team event. There was always points, but this year there was a continuous team event.
Yeah.
And there was 5 of us, and I can't remember who the other 2 are. I remember there was Ross was in it, and Andy was in it, myself, and there was 2 others who I genuinely can't remember. And I had just fought Ben, so the prelims for the team events was just after. And the truth be known, I was a little concussed after fighting Ben because he thumps him, but anyway, we were fighting off, and we got robbed in the team event against the Germans, literally robbed. And all the buses had left, and we were, like me, Ross and Andy, we were hanging around, and we had to get the bus back to the sports resort. Yeah. And I remember going outside of the car park, and the only bus left to get on was the German coach to get back to the thing. You could honestly, it was like a film. You couldn't write it, so I was looking at Ross and Andy, and I was like, oh, no, look, we'll just transfer up and we'll get on. And we walked up the steps to get on. And do you know what? They gave a round of applause. It was like made your hair stand on there. We got such a welcome on that coach. Yeah, and it was like a real sportsman thing. It was genuinely like something in a movie or a film or something. Just on and we sat down. We ended up having some drinks with them later on at the end of the week. And it wasn't the Germans. It wasn't the guys who I was fighting for that we got robbed. They're not the one judging it. Yeah. They're the ones we're sparring and fighting against. It's the other people that rob you. It's never the fighter, is it? So,
no, you're right. When you're doing all these international tournaments, are you going to any away without the national team?
Do I do any big ones without the national team? Are you asking?
Yeah, yeah. Did you go away and do like a Dutch Open or a best fighter or anything like that?
I booked to do the Irish Open.
Yeah.
I was booked to do that, and that was in 2006, and that was the year I snapped me cruciate, so I couldn't fight it, and I still went to watch, but I had planned it, and I thought, because I had made this point of from Canada being poor to really make a go of it, and I thought that I should go and win the Irish Open. That was me thinking, because say what you say about it, it is the biggest tournament that's out there, you know, like, and it's a good one to win. If you've won the Irish Open, you've made it for, you know, like a little bit for yourself.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's what we said with Alex Barrowman. I asked him if he said he prefers the wacko system of fighting now, where you point it on the screen, and I know a lot of people don't like that, but he prefers that. So I said, would you ever go to a wacko World Championships then? And he said that I don't need to, because I've got 3 Irish Open wins. I don't need to.
Yeah. He's 100% right. He is right.
He is, absolutely.
But it is. It's like a power bar, isn't it? It's like an old style video game where you can see if you're in lead or if you're not. The bar travels and stuff. Yeah. It can make a lazy fighter mind. If you're miles ahead, it might make you dance the mat and play a little bit.
But what he was saying, he said on the continent, the Europeans, they tend to keep it close until 10, 15 seconds. He said, and then they'll throw a flurry and it's ended. He said, like, oh shit, like, you know.
What happened there?
What's happened there? Yeah. He said, so he just had to learn to deal with that. But when he cracked it, he cracked it, like.
Oh, he has, like, he's a quality fighter, Alex. I like Alex.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah. Oh, he is. So we went to the Irish Open, and so I sat down and I watched my section, see who won, and Richard Phillips won it. Yeah. And I had competed against Richard 2 or 3 times and beaten him every single time. Yeah. And then I see him winning the Irish Open, and over the moon for him. Well done, you know, like. But it sunk me a little bit. I was thinking, like, if I hadn't done my knee, if I hadn't, you know, like. But again, that's one of these turning points that make you think about how you train, and you look at things slightly different. Yeah. If you're having time out for injury or family or whichever it is. So well done to him. But I was thinking, that should be me having my hand up there, because, you know.
But you did win the World Championships, didn't you? 2008.
Yeah, I won that. Yeah. So I went on moving, beat Ben, and then. There was a Canadian, again, he was a 6'8", this Canadian, he's called Yannick. And he fought points and continuous. So you might have fought Yannick as well. And he was a big fella. Now, he had, I don't know if I had Kumite or some style at Florida as well. Yeah. I'm not sure if it was Kumite. And he had just sidekicked this fella the day before and broke his arm with a kick. Jesus. This psychic guy, I know, and he was bigger than me again, you know. But he had nothing for me when we were on the mat. Yeah, nothing at all. And he used to fight Ben a lot, and Ben always thrashed him, always took it out of him. Yeah, and because he had seen me fight Ben, he must have just presumed that he was going to get the same deal off me. Yeah. And I'm not like that. If I have to be, I have to be. You know, but I'm not. Delicious, yeah. And so he was no contest. I had an easy final, if I would like to say that, in Florida. My final in Florida was actually fighting the quarters with Ben. Yeah, you know, that was what I had classed as my final. Once I got past that, I was all right. That was good. Yeah. Okay,
2009. Do you remember that one, Ireland?
I do. That was where we had the bad ferry crossing. We just were chatting about it earlier. Yeah. So in the cinema, that was the first year that I fought points at world level. Yeah. First year I fought points. I fought at the British, because following on from Switzerland, Joe had said to me, he says, "Have you ever done points?" And I said, "Well, a little earlier on, you know, like about the Taekwondo and stuff, but never really at one of these events." And he says, "Oh, you should do points, Kenn. You should do points. You should do points." And he sort of talked me into doing it at that level. I was like, "Oh, yeah, all right then." And then I used to travel down to train with Alfie to learn points. So I'll be sparring with Robbie and Brendan and Paul and Aaron at the time. So I sparred with a lot of real good points fighters. So I had to learn the game quick.
Yeah.
You know, like in that dojo, you had to learn the game quick. So yeah, so that was. So I played with points there, and the island was my first major like points one world. So that was the first year of WKKC, wasn't it?
Was WKC.
WKC, that's right. Sorry,
was,
WKC.
Yeah.
WKC. Yeah.
Yeah. How did you get on in your points?
You and I in the final.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
leading up to that, leading up to the final, because it was my first year of points, and I had trained with Alfie and Donna and stuff, and that, and you and I had fought in continuous beforehand. So what was it?
I'd got there in Ireland, and I think it was Donna Lewis who said to me, "Are you doing continuous?" And I said, "Oh no, why not? There's only one there, and you're here." And then it was Peter Lewis was like, "Well, there's one, and you're here." So it was like, okay. And I'd fought my first one. I can't remember who it was against, and I'd gone through, and then I fought Colin O'Shaughnessy in the quarterfinals from Ireland.
Yeah.
He's a good fighter, Colin. Still is. He's still fighting. Yeah, so I was fighting Colin. Ian Walmsley was the referee.
Yeah.
Big Ian.
Yeah.
And before we'd even started, he got us together, and he said, "This is light contact." And we were like, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
This was my first time fighting continuous. So I was like, yeah. So we went out, and he was like, whoa. So like for the whole thing, he was bringing us in. He was going, "I'm going to disqualify the pair of yous here." And the two of us were looking at each other like, well, what? And then we'd go again. He was like, right. And he ended up, I think he gave me a minus point, and he gave him a minus point. And at the end, he was like, "Oh, I'm done with you. Just go on. You just go both go." But I got through that.
Yeah.
And I got you in the semi. And I can't remember. I'd come in, I'd throw a couple of punches and maybe a kick. And then I'd get like 6 or 7 shots at me. And it was sort of like, I just wasn't used to it.
My game plan was sparring with you continuous. Again, I'd seen you in all the British ones, the WKs, and like followed you up. Like we're always in the same category, give or take. And I just remember if anybody ever asked me to describe you as a competitor, I always used to use one word, and it was deceiving. I always thought you were rapid, off the mark from point A to point B in a straight line. I always thought you were rapid. You were really quick. So that was in my head when I had a fight with you. So I thought my whole game plan was to be as straight as I possibly could to block your direct line. So I used a lot of sidekicks on you, just boom, boom. And then once I had closed the gap a little bit, fire a few hands, but back to the distance again in order. And that was my whole game plan, to spar with you continuously.
Yeah.
And it was how continuous should be for you and I. We come off the mat and we shook hands, give each other a hug, and we had a good fight. There was no malicious, no malice. It was
absolutely,
we're competing. Do you know what I mean? At the end of it. And then it come to the points. So this was my first points world championships. And I had been training with Alfie and all the guys in his gym. And Donna Lewis had said to me, she was like, "Oh, who you got in the final?" And I said, "Oh, I got Tank." And she sort of rolled her eyes and moved away. And I thought, And it come out that when I spoke to her on it, she was like, "No, Tank's going to thrash you at this. He's going to have you. You're going to be on your gear." And I'm like, right? She's, "Oh, no, he's really rapid." And I was like, "Well, I've just fought him continuous." And, no, I'm telling you, it's a different game points. This is what he does. This is, so I actually, believe it or not, I stood on that mat a little nervous to compete against him in points, even though I had just done continuous.
Did you fought the Italian, didn't you, in the semi-final?
Fought who, sorry?
The Italian in the semi-final.
Yes, I did. And I'm not very good with names, so I never remember the names.
It was Luca Sogliuso.
Was that his name?
I think so, because I'd fought the Irish fella. It was Michael Burke.
Yeah, it was. I remember his name. Yeah.
And then obviously it was our final. So is that what you were thinking going in? Oh, Jesus, like. Yeah,
it was. Even though Donna had said, "Oh, he's going to have you here. He's going to, in my heart of hearts, I thought you would beat me too. You know, like, and I was a little nervous. And in them little nerves, I think it gave me like a faster leg instead of a more powerful leg, because I had like a leg of fear, you know, where you just go boom, boom, and you just fire it out as fast as you can in order to save yourself. And you're not really worried about, you're not trying to hurt the fella across the mat. And that's how I attacked that point, my first world points.
Yeah.
I had surprised myself a little bit on the guys I had beaten to get to the final, to fight you, and I had watched you fight in the final.
Yeah.
And whether you felt it or not, you made the run-up look quite easy. Did you feel that when you were running up to the finals or not?
I don't know. I can't remember. All I remember is, the day before, someone said to me, we were walking around the hotel, and someone had said, "Oh, how did you get on?" I said, "Oh, I'm in the final." And he said, "Who are you fighting?" And I said, "Oh, Kenn Forrest." And he went, "Oh, that'll be a good fight." And I went, "Yeah." And in my head, I was thinking, no, it won't. This is my time. I'm going to make it look easy. That's what I thought in my head. That's genuinely what I thought in my head.
Yeah.
Make it look easy. When we come out, that's what I was going to say to you. Your leg was straight up, and I was standing side on. I knew you weren't going to be breaking the line. You were going to be very direct. Yeah. Your leg, and you were flying out. So I was taking it on the arm, and I was waiting for the opportunity. And then you just lifted it and hit me in the face. And that's when I was like, right, okay, I'm in a fight now.
Yeah. No, I'm going to have to work. Yeah.
I'm in a fight now.
It was neck and neck all the way up there, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
You were winning, I was winning, you were winning. It was neck and neck. I remember that vividly. And Alfie, when I went back for the second round and Alfie was giving me everything, telling me, you've got to win. If you don't win a fight by 5 points, you've not won a fight at all. You know, you've just got lucky. You know, that's what he was telling me. You're not here to get lucky. You're here to win and be the best. You know, like how and it did me a favour. It did me the world of good. And Andy Gray was sitting next to Alfie, and he just passed me the water. And he didn't really say anything. He just let Alfie have his rabble on. And Ian Hollett was sitting for you, wasn't he?
Was Ian and Joe?
Yeah.
Ian and Joe Turney, yeah.
That's right. And I remember coming off there being exhausted, because it was, I'm going to be honest, it was nerves that got me going. As I was saying earlier, nerves got my leg going fast. And again, back to what we were saying at the very beginning, nerves is good. You've got to capitalize on how that works. Use the adrenaline, and instead of letting it sink you, let it make you rise. You know, and it ended up, as you know, like me winning and you coming. Second. Yeah. But that's very, very memorable to me, because it was me first, because it was you know, and Alfie in the corner. Yeah. I've never fought a world's point since. Have you not? No. So you've got 100% record. Yeah, that's right. Oh yeah. I've got a mate who, I don't know, must be 15 years ago. He fought a tournament and he won the tournament, and he's never fought since. But he's told everyone he's unbeaten for 15 years. That's his thing. So he says it sort of to wind one of the other lads up, which gets him going then. And But yeah, I suppose if you can say I'm unbeaten at a world level at points. Having said I've not fought a world point, I love points. I do. I love it now, and I fight points a lot. But I fought things like. It was like a full contact kumite. Ed Byron ran it and put, I think it was a $3,000 prize money, and Drew Neal. It was in Kidderminster in Birmingham. Kidderminster, that's right. Yeah. It was at the same. It was at the same arena. They just done I think it was the Amateur Mr. Universe. Right. Which I'd been to. I know a lad who'd been in it, and I'd been to it a few weeks previous. I think Drew Neal ended up winning it, didn't he? He did. Full Marcus in the final. Sponsored it, won it. Yeah, he sponsored it and won it. Yeah. That he had to win it to get his money back, yeah. Yeah, that went down well. And I enjoyed that event. That was good. I fought Rob Taylor, the Welsh lad, cracking fighter. Yeah, amazing fighter. He ducked under one of my legs and he threw me, I remember, because he did a bit of MMA and stuff, Rob. Yeah. He broke my nose in about the first 30 seconds. And I looked at Andy. Andy was in my corner, and my nose was a bit twisted. And Andy says, "Come here," and he went, and I didn't know my nose because it was just numb off being hit. Yeah, you know, and he like straight my nose a little bit. He says, "There you are, get back in." And that was pretty much Andy's advice really for that tournament. Yeah. Just get back in.
Yeah, there was some big names on that. There was obviously yourself, Drew Neal, Ian Hollitfort on it.
Hollitfort, yeah.
Marcus
Lewis,
David Hughes.
Yeah, David Hughes
on it. Mike Clark.
Yeah. Mike Clark, Mick the Kick.
Yeah. Dropped a brilliant axe kick on someone. I can't remember who it was, but I vividly remember that kick.
Yeah, because I spar with Mick quite regular.
Yeah.
Mick comes up to my gym before this lockdown, and we used to meet up 2 and 3 times a year and do a lot of rounds together. He's still quick, like he's still got it.
I've fought him a few times, and I remember him being really strong.
He is
really strong. Is he? I was going to say he's a farrier, isn't he? Yeah, or a cobbler or something.
He's got a lot of like
swinging a hammer all day.
Does manual labour and like So, but it was a great event, and that actually showcased people who like it made you. I'm not going to say a superstar because you're not, but it made you more of a household name.
Yeah.
You know, like because
more prominent in the sport, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. When you came onto the mat, and it was like the name came up on the TV up above you, and they told you what they were, and a couple of your accolades and stuff, and then you stood on the mat in a horseshoe, and you got introduced, and that was brilliant. That's one of the things that's the downside a little bit of our sport. You know, like I was talking to somebody yesterday in the class, and I was saying, I was coming on your podcast and telling them, and they said, "Are you famous?" And I was like, "Well, no, it's got nothing to do with being famous." I said, "But who's the best snooker player in the world?" And they went, "I don't know." I says, "Who's the best basketball player in the world?" And they're like, "I don't know." "Well, who's the best rower in the world?" And they're like, "Well, I don't know." I said, "So how would you know who the best kickboxer in the world is?"
Yeah.
I says, "So you're famous within." I says, "By the by, it's not me anymore." You know, like I says, but I says, "You're only famous within your own little small circle of the sport that you do." And once you leave that sort of circle, I'm back to Kenn Forrest, who works in a scrapyard. You know, like, and that's what I do for day-to-day life. Yeah. It's only when you're on that mat and you're in a tournament that, you know, and they're like, "All right." Yeah, so and that's what I liked about that full contact, the combat.
Yeah, he done it well, Ed Burns, didn't he? I'm sure. I'm going back years. Ed fought in the Kumites of old.
Yeah, I think he did.
He did. Yeah,
I think he did. Yeah,
with the likes of Billy Bryce, Joe Turney, you know, all the top names back then. I'm sure. In fact, I'm sure he had a bit of a dodgy haircut as well. I'm going to dig honestly, I'm going to dig a magazine out and maybe put it up and send it to him. Yeah.
You do that, that was good. Moving on, where do I go from there?
How many world titles did you actually win then, Ken?
3.
3.
2 in continuous, one in Florida.
Yeah.
Ireland, continuous in Ireland, and then the points in Ireland. So I doubled it up in Ireland. Yeah. And that was in 2009. Yeah. And then I didn't really go to the Worlds and compete from then on. I took a team, and I didn't really like competing with my students.
Yeah.
You know, like I felt not a hypocrite, but you know how you tell them what to do all day, every day, and how to train and angles to move and everything to do. You get on the mat and you fight your way. You don't fight the way, because I don't coach people to fight the same way as I fought. I coach people to be the best that they can be, using their skill set and their attributes. So I didn't want them to step on the mat and say, "Well, you don't do that," or "You don't do that," or not believe how. I know that sounds a bit silly, like, because they train with me anyway and they spar with me. So I just used to go as a coach from that time, and I used to stick so I fought Clash a couple of times, and then at Kumite, and I fought the top 10 points challenge, and then I was one in Birmingham NEC, which was points. I ended up fighting MVP, I think, in the semis, but it was a team event. And then I fought, it was a Quad challenge. So I fought I'm going to say, definitely not the Irish Open standards, but like a lot of like bespoke tournaments, you know, like that was put on for crowds, you know, like a high-end points fight.
Yeah, like the Combat 32 or the Clash. I meant to actually talk about the Clash with Alex Barrowman, but for those who don't know, it was a continuous team event.
Yes.
Wasn't it?
It was. No, I grew up...
wasn't quite like contact.
No, it 100% wasn't like contact.
No.
You never got chastised or anything for your contact level. And I grew up traveling to Clash of the Titans and watching people like Alfie fight Kevin Brewerton and Master Skane doing demos. And that was Ian Fox, the stretching guy. Can you remember Ian Fox, the stretching guy?
Yeah.
Come on, as James Bond. So as a child, I used to go to these every year and grew up watching these, what were household names in martial arts, if you're within martial arts. Yeah. So that's where I wanted to see myself. Instead of just doing worlds, I thought, get to these events where there's, I don't know, maybe there's 1,000 people paid to come and see you and watch you. Yeah. And because of my youth and watching this, I didn't really see myself as, I want to be that world championships. I want to go to the world titles. I wanted to be a UK person where people could recognise me in the UK for what I did. And I felt that was a good path to be in. But Clash, it was my fault that the Mushin Kai did Clash the first time when I did it. Yeah. Because I had seen it advertised. And then I'd rang Alfie. And I go, Alfie says, we've got to do this. I says, I've done points with you for forever. You know, we need to do this Clash. It's continuous. We put a Clash team in. And he's like, yeah, if you want to. Yeah. So. Yeah,
never says no, Alfie, does he? No.
No, if it meant in a scrap. Yeah. No. But that meant me travelling from here to Liverpool every Sunday, like every weekend. Yeah. For about 8 weekends in a row. Yeah. Very time consuming. But again, I couldn't have bought better training,
absolutely, yeah.
We're training as a team in there for Clash.
You get the team elements as well then, don't you?
You do. You just bond with everybody because you break at different times. Everybody has a crying and a bleeding spell within your training. And that was great, that Clash. When I got to Clash, I thought, yes, I'm here. Because I had watched it that much as a child, I really wanted to be. And I remember we were going to... my first worlds we're talking about was in Killarney in Ireland, and the bus trips for 1.5 hours. Yeah. And I can't remember. It was Robbie Hughes Senior. He put an old Clash DVD on the bus, so it was playing on the little TV as we were traveling. And I thought, we're world level competitors going to the world championships, and we're watching Clash, and everybody's looking and they're talking about the names. And again, that had just instilled it in me a little bit that. That's what I should be fighting on. That's what I want to do. That's. So I thought, we've got to do this.
This is your thing, yeah. So when you take your students now to competition, how much do you think the tournament scene's changed since you were fighting yourself?
Dramatically, I would say. Dramatically.
Is that because of associations or?
I think associations have a lot to do with it. Yeah. And each association have a different aspect. They have a different sort of ethos in it. Some associations, they want you to be fast and and not hit each other and like professional tag. There's other ones where you can really go at each other. And I think people stick to that. It's like a bunch of 20 pubs, and each pub has different music on. Now, if you're out with your wife or your friends or whatever, you're going to go into that pub that's playing the music that you like. Yeah. If that makes any sense, rather than go. So if you're in a heavy metal, you're going to go into a heavy metal bar, not a pop one. Yeah. And I think the tournaments are a little bit like that. I know it's a funny analogy, but if you like to scrap on, you will go to a certain association. If you want to say you're a kickboxer and not necessarily want to get hurt and you stand zero chance of getting hurt, you'll go to another association. Yeah. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's what happens because it's split between, we'll say, 5 splinters of main associations, world levels. Them people don't go to the British level as often to compete. So you go to the tournament and you haven't, the diversity's not there. You haven't got the guy who wants to be fast and keep his distance. You haven't got the guy who comes straight down the line. You haven't got the guy who's full of stamina and who's worked to train at that aspect. All of that's watered down, and you've got, there's the same ilk on each mat, on each tournament, so unless you physically travel to each tournament and go to, right, I'm going to go to WACO, right, I'm going to WKKC, I'm going to do KC, I'm going to do the WMO, WK, unless you've traveled to all of them, you're fighting the same niche in like sort of fight, and I think that spoils the British level tournaments. Not so much maybe at Worlds, but I do think at British level, it spoils a British level tournament.
I know you're involved with WMO now. Why WMO?
Half and half, to be fair. Half, Alfie brought me on a lot. He took me under his wing, and it's my little way of giving back. And I'm a loyal person, actually. You know, like I'd much rather help somebody out as be part of their success as part of the failure. So I want to help. And on the other side of it, I know there's other sort of competitions that've got real good points upon them too. And last year and the year before, we as a team, we went to every British available. We have done for the last 3 years. But what I like about the WMO, it makes you want to be an athlete because you get a stand in the 8 count if you haven't got the conditioning. You know, for me, as me being a heavyweight back in the day, there was a lot of guys who didn't treat it like they should be an athlete. They just turned up and they just wanted to thump you for 5. You know, like if it was a 1-round fight, you would have to fight really hard to beat them because they'll just go hard for 1 round. So it took the athlete out of it. The skilled fighter didn't really show his skill set until the 2nd or 3rd round, while until the bruiser had got tired. You know, like you had to really wait your time. And the WMO brings that aspect into it. It's always 2-2s. It's always 2 rounds for whether you're prelim or whether you're a final. If you're out of condition, you're going to get a stand in 8 count as you would in pro boxing and stuff. It makes you have to train. So it makes you be in condition. That's pretty much in a nutshell why I sort of support the WMO. But that's not to say, like I say, I do all the other British ones. If the right worlds come up at the right time, at the right dates, my students can go anywhere. We never say you can't do this. You can't do that. We can go anywhere we want. The WMO is getting stronger, but so is the WKKC. You know, like they run very side by side. They're like, I don't mean that they're a competition in a bad way. A good competition for each other. You know, like it's never going to happen. You know, like, but I remember the day where there was just 2 tournaments. You either fought WKA or you fought WACO. And again, that split you. If you preferred your pointsy style, you went to WACO points. If you were more of a continuous, for me, I did WKA because I was continuous. I'd love to get back to that and bring the sport back. I tell my students who are like maybe 13, 14, up to 20, and I tell them, oh, there was 25 people in the section, you know, had to fight all the time, and you know, like you very rarely fought the same person through. You might have fought the same person in the final 2 or 3 years in a row because you guys have fought your way up, but the road to the final was different every year, and that's not the case now, is it?
It's not. No, you know, there's a lot of times people can go to a tournament and not get a fight or get a final, and it'll be the same person that they fought in a final up the other end of the country the week previous. But there are some tournaments you go to still and there's 20 people in a category. It doesn't happen often.
No.
But it does happen now and again. If you get the right tournament.
If you watch some of the younger ones, and everybody will say, oh, they want a good fight and they want to work their way up. And if you watch some of the teens that's not used to being 20 people in their section, they might look at the table or look at the draw sheet and they'll see there's 20 people. And you can see them sink a little bit and think, oh, 20 people in my section. You know, like as much as they talk the talk and say they want to fight 5 rounds and fight everybody, and you know, like when they get there and they see there actually is 20 people in their section. Where you used to look at it and say, there's only 20 people in our section. 20 people in my section, that's right. I've only got 4 fights today. That's great.
When we spoke with Alex Barham, he was talking about the Irish Open, he said he looked on the draw sheet and there's about 76 people in there. He said, but as you're going through, he said you're not even looking then at the draw sheet. You're just going through.
Again, that was one of the things I learned early on. I would stand across the mat, and there might be, we'll say, if you put all your competitors on the other end of the mat, and there's 50 people in your section, you would look at that person one, and you think, oh, he's great with his sidekick. He's going to hit me with a sidekick. He's great with his hands. And in your head, you would fight the 50 people. That's not reality. You don't fight the 50 people.
No.
Because after one fight, you're down to 25. So you fought one person, and it's 25. And the Irish Open, there's 4,000 competitors. If you were to put all them competitors in one mat and you all fought, after one fight, there's 2,000.
Yeah.
You know, and if you just play the numbers game and don't look at it like there's a million people and you fight each person as it comes, you put them on the mat in front of you, you work your heart out, you beat that person, move on, get the next person. Now, if there was a million people in your section, it's 22 fights. A million people's only 22 fights.
How have you worked that out that quick? You just you're a calculator there, Ken. Jesus.
No, honestly, I haven't. No. But that's something I don't preach, but I sort of get over. You know, like, and you've got to stop worrying about the 500,000 you're not going to fight.
Yeah.
Worry about just work and fight the person that you're going to have to.
Yeah.
No, and that side of the tournament's lost. Yeah.
Yeah. How did it come about you start teaching and opening your own club?
Do you know what? I've had a club since I was 17.
Yeah.
I've always taught a club, and part of it was part of that the Northern Freestyle I was talking about, which was a Northern Freestyle Karate. And I ended up taking over someone's club, but somebody kindly gave me that club, and I taught from there. And because they came from the club with Northern Freestyle, it didn't compete. I never really pushed them to compete. I never asked them. I just used to teach, and I just used to teach their syllabus. It wasn't until I started competing that I changed, and I've got a complete different syllabus now. So mine is it's a competitive club, what I teach now. So even though I've had a club from when I was 17, it's only in the last 15 year-ish that I would class mine as a competitive club, you know, where I would take a team and travel and then they would compete. But I love teaching mine, I do. It's nice. I don't think I would teach every night. Okay, because I like to go into the dojo, and I may teach 3 or 4 nights, or maybe 8 or 10 classes a week. But I love going into the dojo like with a new idea or like an excitement what I want to teach, and because it's not my primary job, and I'm not waiting on the money to come from my martial arts. Yeah, I enjoy walking into the club excited to teach and a buzz on it. I don't have to fill space. Do you get what I mean? Yeah. I actually enjoy my martial arts, and I'll always do that. I'll always keep it where I enjoy me teaching. Both my boys do it now. I've got 2 boys who are 11 and 14, and they train with me every night. I'm not sure if they want to teach or whatever, but they train, and it's nice. The elder one used to. The youngest one, no. But the elder one used to, but then he's decided on an acting career and he wants to focus on some acting. Yeah. But he competed. He won a WMO Worlds 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago. Okay. So he competed at a good level. He won points and continuous, and he fights them both, and he had fought all the way up. But no, they don't really compete now. They're just happy training, you know. Yeah. But I never forced them to train. When I leave the gym, when I leave the house, they've always got the kit on ready to come. I never have to say, come on, we're going. And the day that they haven't got it on, it's fine. I've seen too many martial arts instructors with kids who the children end up resenting them, I think, later on because they've drummed it into them that much, Yeah, and it was their way of babysitting by teaching a martial arts class. Yeah. And I never want to be like that. I want them to be involved because martial arts has given me loads, mind. The discipline and control and respect that I sort of try and ooze into me everyday life. I got that from martial arts. I got it from, I'm fortunate that I've had some really good martial arts instructors. Yeah. They didn't only just teach martial arts, they had some good life skills upon them, you know, and they helped you a little bit. And that's what I try and put into my club as well. Some life skills, you know, like, and help them get on. Some confidence, or just being able to speak to people or stand up in front of a class. Just little things, you know. But I still just teach martial arts, and as we were talking about earlier,
Well, what does the future hold then for you in martial arts?
Future, maybe as you heard it here first, but I'd love to compete again. Yeah. I had a bad hip for maybe 7 years now. It just got progressively worse. Since the last time I fought Clash, I knew it was on the way out then. I was having a lot of trouble with it, a lot of pain. Yeah. And I was talking to Ian about it, Ian Hollett, actually. And he was asking me on, because I don't know if he still has trouble with his hips or whether they're good or bad. And from then I had mine resurfaced, I had it reshaped, and it still wasn't right. And I've now had a replacement 9 months ago, and it's amazing. I'm in zero pain. I train every day. I'm sparring with the young guys in the gym who are good. And I'm getting that buzz back again of sparring competitively instead of just enjoying martial arts but being in pain. I'm now not in pain, and I'm getting the buzz from competing. So I'd love to compete again.
Why not?
Exactly, 100%. Why not? I used to look forward to tournaments, and I don't want to put too much pressure on myself because people may say, "Oh, you were good back in the day." But back in the day, it was 15 years ago, and I didn't have my knee rebuilt twice, and I didn't have a false hip.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point to make, mate. Yeah,
you know what I mean. So I'd like to test the water a little bit and see how it goes.
Yeah,
and continue with the teaching. I would love the club. I'd like some assistant instructors underneath because you see a lot of clubs and they've all got guys who help, and I've got loads of guys who help, but I'm the one that turns up every night and does the classes.
Yeah,
so rather than just teach martial arts, I'd like to sort of teach somebody to teach them so they can open their own club and their own teach, sort of like an apprenticeship of being a martial arts instructor, which they'll get the majority of it through me classes. But that's my next stage. I'd like to take a couple of guys under my wing and let them do what I did, open their own club, put their own stamp on it, which is what martial arts is all about, isn't it? You go and you put your own little bit of it when you know. And so, they're my two to-dos, I would think, in the next few years.
Right, brilliant, mate. I think we've come to the end there. We've covered most of it, haven't we?
Yeah, we've had a good old catch-up.
We've had a good old catch-up, yeah. When I text, we said we were going to get together, weren't we? Maybe go for a curry or something. Yeah, get it.
100%. Yeah, 100%. That would be fantastic. I can't wait to do it.
We'll definitely sort something out. But listen, thanks for coming on and doing this, Ken, because you didn't have to do it. But it's brilliant having you on. It really is.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure. Honest, loved it. Satya, I've just looked at the clock to see what's happened with the time there, and it's flown over.
Yeah,
can't believe it's gone.
Yeah, I know. It's great, mate. Really appreciate that.